मुदीर्यते शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनं हृद्यन्तस्त्वभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतां नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी सर्वशास्त्रादिपीयूष सर्ववैदिकसत्फल सर्वसिद्धान्तरत्नाय सर्वलौकिकदृक्प्रदा. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much. So we are going to continue our discussion, Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 27th chapter. And today we will be discussing, text number is 21. So 327. Yeah, and text 21. So let me share my screen. Actually, we'll do 21 and maybe touch upon 22. So let me share my screen. Okay. So I hope everyone can see my screen. So 3:27:21. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Animita Nimitena Swadharmena Amlatmana Tivraya Mai Bhaktya Shruta Samvratyaya Chiram. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Animita Nimitena Swadharmena Malalatmana Tivraya Mai Bhaktya Cha Shruta Sambhrataya Chiram. Can you like to chant?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I can try.
Yes, Mother.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Animitta Nimittena Sarva Dharmena Malatmana Tivraya Mai Bhaktaya Cha Shruta Sambhratya Chiram. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else would like to chant?
I can try, Prabhu.
Yes, Mother.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Animittanimittena Swadharmenamlatmana Tivraya Mai Bhaktya Cha Shruta Samvritaya Chiram.
Okay, thank you. One more person?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Can I
Go
read
ahead.
it once?
Yeah.
Okay. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Annimitta Nimittena Swadharmena Malatmana Tivraya Mai Bhaktya Cha Shruta Samvritaya Charam.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so we'll discuss. So, where are we in the Srimad Bhagavatam? We are discussing the teachings of Lord Kapildev to his mother Devahuti, and the chapter, the beautiful chapter where we discuss so many shlokas is the 25th chapter, which is directly on glories of devotional service, and we discussed many verses from that. And then we made the point that when the conversation started, Kapila actually explained that I will explain Adhyatmika Yoga. Adhyatmika Yoga. And that was the verse from which first Bhakti was explained. Now next, Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, both the same, is actually explained and how that leads to Bhakti, right? And then the third, next chapter, we'll see how Kapil Dev actually explains how Astanga Yoga finally leads to Bhakti. And this is similar to Bhagavad Gita, right? In Bhagavad Gita, we say first 5 chapters, Karma Yoga, how that leads to Bhakti Yoga. Then chapter number 6, Dhyana or Astanga Yoga, how that concludes with Bhakti. And then 7 to 12, Anyas Bhakti. But then after it is 13 to 17 or 18 is actually Jnana Yoga and how that leads to Bhakti. So similarly here, Kapil Dev is actually explaining the same point. So last class, we discussed this, that in Jnana Yoga, the first, or Astanga Yoga, right? Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, right? These two words are, the processes are same, Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. So the first point that we need to understand is what we discussed in our last class, which is the relationship between 3 aspects, right? J, J, J. I hope you all remember. J, Jiva, J, Jagat, and J, Jagadish, right? So the living entity or Jagat or Prakriti and Purusha. So these 3, and what is the relationship between each of these 3, right? So we discussed last time what is the relationship between Jiva and Prakriti, right? Then we discussed relationship between Prakriti and Purusha, and then relationship between Purusha and Jiva. Right? So, so that was our discussion last time. And then after that, so the conversation continues. And in Sankhya, Sankhya means to count, right? So count to count. So after understanding this, then the question is, okay, why is the Jiva, right? Which is one way we read in this this triangle of JJJ, that how is the Jiva related to Purusha? And in that aspect, we said it is a Purusha who is actually the Anumanta, the Upadrishta, and the one who actually gives the results of the karma to the Jiva, right? It's the Purusha who actually does that, right? Jiva has the free will, but because right now he's conditioned by the modes of material nature, that's referring to Prakriti, the Purusha is the one who sits in the heart of every living entity. He sanctions every desire that the Jiva has based on the karma also, right? So desire and deserve. So what he deserves, so he he fulfills that desires, but all that is a connection with Purusha. Now, why is the Jiva here in this material world? Right? How did the material world get created? How did the Purusha create the material world? So all that knowledge is this aspect of Sankhya Yoga. So this entire chapter, actually this is we are discussing, so last time we discussed 26, right? So in this previous chapter, we see how Kapil Dev explains, he starts off like how this creation takes place. He starts off with like the aspect of Pradhan, right? So we already discussed how it is the Purusha who actually glances over Prakriti, right? And through the glance, the living entities are impregnated. But before that, we discussed how this Prakriti is created. The first element being Pradhan. Then from Pradhan has the three modes, but they are in the unmixed state. But as soon as the modes start getting agitated, you have Mahatattva. And then after Mahatattva, we talk of Ahankar, right? So this Mahatattva transforms into Ahankar, false ego. So the basis of existence here in this material world is the false ego, where we think we are the doer, right? And that false ego is again three kinds, right? Monogoodness, passion, ignorance, right? And then based on these Ahankar in these three modes, then you have the senses, the mind, the intelligence, and the sense objects, right? So we have sound, ether, touch, right? Air, form, fire, taste, water, smell, and earth. So these 10 elements, right? So earth, water, fire, air, ether, and the sense through which you connect with it. So the earth, that has the aspect of smell, right? When it rains, then you can smell, right? Then fire has the aspect of form, right? And so on, right? So all these, so 5 objects and then 5 senses, like how they are perceived, right? So that is 10. So all those elements. So, and then after explaining this whole thing, he explains 3 energies are active. Karya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. I know this is very technical, but the interesting point is in 2nd canto, 5th chapter, 3rd canto, 5th chapter, and now again 3rd canto, 26th chapter, again and again and again, that same aspect of creation, how creation takes place, is actually again and again mentioned in Bhagavatam. And one may say, like, why? Actually, one devotee said, he said, like, almost 7 times in the 2nd canto and the 3rd canto, we see this aspect of creation of this material world. And one may say, like, why? Actually, if you say Bhagavatam is Amala, spotless Purana, then there should be no repetition. Because normally they say repetition, okay, that is one aspect where there's emphasis. But if you again and again repeat something, then it seems like, why are you repeating? I understood, I already read this section, take me deeper. But there is a deeper aspect of this repetition. 7 times in 2nd and 3rd canto, this creation is explained. And when we read this creation again and again and again, then one thing becomes very clear, that how the creation is so systematic, right? And how in this systematic creation, in every aspect of the creation, the presence of the Lord is there. Without the energies of the Lord, there is no creation. Right? We started off by the glance of the Lord. Then even when, it is said like the Lord, he enters into the universe in three aspects. The time aspect. Without time aspect, time is the energy of the Lord, there would be no creation. Pradhan would remain Pradhan. But because of the time aspect, then Pradhan becomes Mahatattva. Right? And then it continues. So Kala is there, Karma is there, and then Gunas, the three Gunas. All that is manifestation of the energy of the Lord. And even when all this creation takes place, then in this section, Kapila Dev says, all this is there, but unless Vasudev enters into it as consciousness, this creation will not, nothing will happen. Right? So again and again we read, yes, systematic creation, but every aspect of a creation, the Lord's presence is there. And what does this tell us? Like, there is a underlining theme of the second canto and third canto. Like one way we say 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, Atra Sargo Visargasya Sthanam Poshanam Utaya Manvantara Ishanukata Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. Right? These are 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now in this, you see first is Sarga and second is Visarga. Primary creation, secondary creation. So what we are reading here is primary creation again and again and again. Right? So when we are reading this, one thing becomes very clear that, as I mentioned, systematic and the presence of the Lord in every aspect. And what does this tell us? It actually clearly, if you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam systematically, at this point, you clearly understand that the Lord has created this material world for a particular purpose. And when you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, at this point, you'll think like, why did the Lord even create this material universe, right? And that aspect becomes very clear. And then we think about the purpose behind the material world. And this second and third canto, it says when conditioned jiva is actually reading through the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually assimilating the wisdom. By the end of the third canto, he will understand that this material world is not meant for my enjoyment. And that's like such a deep point because, normally like we are so conditioned that everything we do is like, okay, what am I getting out of it? How can I enjoy? If there's enjoyment, I'll do it. Otherwise I'm not interested. But just these sections of the Bhagavatam reveals to us that actually there is a cause behind it. Right? The material world is not meant for our enjoyment, but rather it is meant for transforming our consciousness from the polluted state to the pure state. So that aspect becomes very clear. And then, and then we'll read further that what does fourth canto actually bring that point. So, having understood that the purpose in this of this creation and it's not meant for our enjoyment, immediately the next step is, okay, it's not meant for my enjoyment. I am here in this material world. There's a purpose, the creation is there. And hence, what should I do? Okay, let me turn to the Vedas and see what I'm supposed to do. And immediately, the first aspect of Veda is sacrifices. Therefore, perform sacrifices. Therefore, in third chapter, Bhagavad Gita, in 10th verse, Krishna actually makes a point. He says, Saha Yagya Prajashrishta. Right? I created this world and sent forth sacrifices by which you can be happy, by which the jiva can be. You want to be happy? Yes, perform sacrifices. Right? So, the whole third canto emphasis is understanding that material world is not meant for our enjoyment, and let me actually perform sacrifice. If I want to enjoy, I have to do it through sacrifices, right? So, anyway, that's like the underlying theme. So again in this chapter, like we see the Virat Purusha explained. This is like, again and again we are reading Virat Purusha, and how like different aspects of the material world is actually different parts of the body of the Virat Rupa, right? So it talks of ears of the Virat Rupa, eyes of the Virat Rupa, hands of the Virat Rupa, and so on. Right? Now, further, so as I mentioned, this is a topic of Gyan Yoga. So we'll come to today's verse. But in this chapter, in chapter number 27, he continues. Okay, we are discussing Sankhya. Previous chapter already explained the creation. All the points that I mentioned should be clear to the reader of the Bhagavatam. And then in this chapter, he talks of 18 qualities that a person who is practicing Sankhya or Gyan Yoga should actually cultivate. Right? 18 qualities are mentioned from text 7 onwards. Right? He talks about qualities like equality to all living entities. Right? Sarva Bhuta Samatva. Samatva means having that equal vision, right? Then he talks of qualities like brahmacharya, celibacy. If someone is practicing Jnana Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, then there has to be complete celibacy, right? So normally a grahastha as such, this is not a path for the grahastha, right? Then it talks of other things like mita bhuka, regulated eating. Then talks of peaceful, shantaha, maitraha, friendly to everyone, karuna, compassionate to everyone. Right? So many different qualities are mentioned. Right? Now, after these qualities are mentioned, then this section is actually, it's very interesting that in this Sankhya Yoga, Kapil Dev actually proves the presence of the soul and the super soul. This is, if someone is really, because Sankhya Yoga means you're really like using that philosophical speculation to understand things, right? You're like, okay, what is this? What is this? And through that process in Bhagavatam, it actually proves how super soul exists, right? And first proving the existence of the soul, and then proving the existence of the super soul, right? And I won't go. This itself will take some time to explain. But he uses examples of like sun in the sky, how it is reflected in the water, the sunshine is reflected, and how that light, if there's a wall near the water body, you can see the light on the water. So he talks of this whole theory of reflection, and through that he proves the soul, how the consciousness is reflected on the senses. And then further, he actually proves that using this philosophy of reflection, how the laws, energies are reflected in this material world, and that infers that yes, the Lord exists. Anyway, this will need more time. If you are interested, you can read the text number 12 and 13 of this chapter. And it's actually from Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada, he gives a long purport, but he explains Jiva Goswami, how Jiva Goswami, in his Kram Sandarbha, he actually explains this section elaborately, proving how the soul and the super soul, how you can actually prove that the super soul exists. Right? So after this whole section, where, so we did the material world, so talked of earth, water, fire, air, ether, senses, working senses, right? Knowledge acquiring senses, all those, and then coming to the mind, intelligence, false ego, right? That actually comes to 23, and then finally 24th is the soul, and then 25th is the super soul. So the conclusion of Jnana Yoga is the Jiva realizes, okay, I am spirit soul, and my source is the super soul. And at that point, after realizing, then the next part is, okay, if you realize our soul, our source is the super soul, then what do? You'll turn to the super soul and say like, okay, let me serve you. And that's the start of bhakti. And that's how Kapil Dev proves that the perfection of Jnana Yoga leads to bhakti, because the jiva realizes that I am part and parcel of super soul, and therefore he starts, okay, how can I serve the super soul? And that is bhakti. Right? Okay, so now Devoti asks a question which leads to today's answer, today's verse, where she says, okay, it makes sense how Sankhya Yoga progresses and becomes bhakti. But if you see practically in this world, that connection between the Prakriti and Jiva, right, the living entity and this material world, is actually, it seems like they are naturally attracted to each other. Isn't it? We are in this conditioned soul, and we see any nice object and we are like, oh wow, so beautiful. And it could be like a nice beautiful scenery also. We see like, oh, this you can say like a river flowing, and the trees reflected in the river and the sound of the river, and then we are like attracted. Oh, so beautiful, this material world is so beautiful. And Devotee is making the point, because we have these senses are looking at sense objects, and then it seems like the senses and sense object, their connection is so, like, they are so connected that it seems almost impossible to separate the senses from the sense object. So therefore her question is, how can anyone attain liberation? Like, it's just like one may give the example of like iron filings and magnet. Now, as soon as the magnet is in the vicinity, or the iron filings in the vicinity of the magnet, immediately they get connected. And same point that Kapil Dev says, that the iron filings is just like our senses, right? and the magnet is this Prakriti. And as soon as the Jiva and Prakriti are together, immediately Jiva, the senses see something, the ear hear something, we eat something, immediately it feels like, oh, this is nice. And the connection is so, so close, it's connected together. And hence, devotee asks, is liberation even possible? She's asking her own son, Kapil Dev, is liberation even possible? And then hence, Kapil Dev replies to that through today's verse. Right? So therefore he starts off by saying, Shri Bhagavan Vacha. So Kapil Dev is giving an answer to devotee's question. And he says, first point. So he lists different items that one should do to actually attain liberation. First one is Animita Nimitena. So Animita Nimitena means, yes, we are in this material world, we are going to work. First thing we need to do is we should not have the desire for the results of our work. Yes, we work, but understand karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kara, that the results are not in our hand. You just focus on the activity. Do your work properly. No problem. But don't be attached to it. That's the first point. That's not the whole solution. First point. Second point is swadharmena. Swadharmena means one should execute one's prescribed duties. Right? In terms of varna and ashrama. And you see, even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually emphasizes this point. Right? It's so interesting that, like if you see two verses in Bhagavad Gita are repeated, one is manmana bhava mad bhakto, and the second verse is basically based on executing one's own prescribed duty. And it's, in Kali Yuga, like many of us were like, I don't even know what is my varna. Am I a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra? I don't even know. So how can I execute? And hence is, say, Harinam Eva Kevalam, right? So in Kali Yuga, holy name is everything. But also, Prabhupada also said like 50% of our mission was to establish this one ashram. Why? Because it's important. If we can know what is our varna and act according to our varna, then it actually supports our spiritual life. Then to practice our bhakti becomes very natural. And our swadharmena, our occupational duty itself, will be an impetus for us to grow in bhakti. But many times now these days, like we work and after work our mind is so tired that instead of like, the mind being like kind of prepared so that we can do bhakti activity, the mind is almost in a state after work, oh, I'm so tired, I just want to watch something or do activities which is just like kind of escape from the world, right? We watch something or we go for vacation or things like that, and we just want to forget the world. So that's the problem, right? So, but if someone acts, so first, animita nimitena, work without desiring the results. Second, swadharmena, act according to one's prescribed duty. Third point, amala atmana, right? Amala atmana. Amala means spotless or pure. Atmana here refers to the mind. So third, we should do all this with a pure mind. Because the mind is not pure. If you are doing activities by which the mind is getting more and more polluted, then there is no chance of being detached from the results. Only with a pure mind can we detach from the results, right? Otherwise, that means that if the mind is not pure, means there's desire, so many unlimited material desires, and then we'll be attached to the results. So third point is, with a purified mind, we should do this. Right? Fourth point, tivraya. So we already discussed this word just in chapter number 25, where Kapil Dev was talking of devotional service, and he talked of tivra bhakti. Again, you see here, tivraya mai bhaktyacha. Serious, intense devotional service unto me. So finally, this is the main point. That how can we attain liberation? By engaging in tivra bhakti. And at the same time, we should, not desire the results of activities. We should execute our prescribed duties with a pure mind, right? 3 points above. But the fourth point is the main point. Tivra bhakti yoga, right? And what does it mean, bhakti yoga, tivra? Here it says, Shruta Sambritaya Chiram. Chiram means for a long time. Shruta means hearing. Sambritaya endowed with. So basically the next point is one should nourish one's consciousness by hearing about Krishna for is it like 5 minutes every day? No, for a long time. As much as possible we want to hear Krishna Katha. Right? So it's interesting how Bhagavatam again and again and again and again brings us to a point of hearing Krishna Katha. Right? The devotees in there, when they attain perfection, they say, "Oh Krishna, only one desire." What is that? Please fill my ears with just Harikatha. Give me that association of devotees that I can just keep hearing Harikatha. Right? So there's a verse here. So Prabhupada's translation is the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service, right? So intense, tivra unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. So that is Shruta Samvrataya Chiram. And then by thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, right? Animita nimitena, and one will be freed from contamination of matter. So Swadharmena Amal Latmana. Right? So these points are mentioned. Right. So Prabhupada in the purport gives explains that one right. So this is the point. So the question the devotee asks is, we are like in the material world and we are so connected to it that it seems like liberation is impossible. And here Kapil Dev is making the point, if we are living following these principles, then the main thing is when we are hearing Krishna Katha. So even though we are in this world, if we are absorbed in Krishna Katha, we are actually not in this world. We are no longer here. We are actually directly in contact with Krishna. So the point is, yes, we are jiva attracted to Prakriti, but that connection can be broken when we are absorbed with spiritual sound vibration. Right. Yeah, Prabhupada mentions Swanustisya Dharmasya Samsiddhi Haritoshanam Yagyartha Karmano Anyatra. So all these verses, I kind of touched upon these points in the discussion today. Okay. So I'll stop here. So again, through Sankhya Yoga, we are concluded with the same point of Tibra Bhakti Yoga. Right? Okay. And like one point we say like, oh, every conclusion we come to the same point. And that's the whole point, that when we read this again and again, it intensifies our faith, our Shraddha. And that's a sign of progress in Bhakti. The Shraddha becomes stronger, deeper and deeper and deeper. And we are just convinced. Right? Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kohe Sudride Vishwe Krishna Bhakti Kohle Sarva Karma Krita Hoye. What is a Shraddha? And that firm conviction that I just need to, my main purpose of life is Krishna Bhakti. Sarva Karma Krita. And if I do that, everything else will be perfect in my life. Krishna will take care. So, okay, stop here. So, are there any questions? Yes, Shri Akshat.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Achita Balram.
Yes, Akshat Balang.
Probably I missed it, Prabhu, or I haven't understood it. Can you just repeat the reason why it was redundant all over the chapters, like in 2.5 and 3.5? Why the description of the material nature was actually repeated again and again?
Yeah. So the point is basically, as I mentioned, when you read this again and again, the two things we see for clear. One is it's very systematic, and second is Krishna is involved in every aspect of the creation. And that leads us to the point that Krishna has systematically created this material world for a purpose. Now our question is, what is the purpose? Right? And that leads the jiva to understand that Krishna has created this not for our enjoyment. The material world is not meant for our enjoyment. The material world is meant to transform our consciousness. And how do we do that? Canto 3 emphasis is on Vedic sacrifices. And then Canto 4 will actually take us beyond that. But at least the point to understand, material world is not for our enjoyment. If you want to enjoy, do it through Vedic sacrifices. That's it. Don't try to unrestrictedly enjoy it. And this is like a very deep point, right? I mean, deep-rooted aspect. Even when we are engaged in devotional service for years and years, that desire to enjoy is so deep-rooted. But Bhagavatam 3rd Canto is uprooting that desire by, again, repeating this section.
Emphasis, Prabhu. So it is basically emphasizing that
Yeah,
same point.
emphasis, but also like it is. See, Bhagavatam is like one way. Yes, we are reading Bhagavatam, but Bhagavatam is also a journey. Like how Prabhupada said, by reading up to the 9th canto of Bhagavatam, then if you're really reading, you'll become a God realized person by the end of 9th canto, and then you are ready to study the 10th canto. So it is not just reading, it is a journey of the conditioned jiva. And by the end of 3rd canto, that determination that I am meant to enjoy, the enjoying tendency will actually be uprooted.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So thank you all so much. So stop here. Grantashram Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Manchakalpatarupasya Kripa Sindhubhyo cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.